Welcome to Belgrade Online. I'm Dan, the video editor of Belgrade Online. Here are this week's announcements, followed by Dan's sermon and some music to brighten your day. Thanks again for watching Belgrade Online.
Happy Father's Day, neighbor.
Happy Father's Day.
Yeah, it's a family tradition. Wear your Father's Day gifts all day.
You wore that to church this morning?
Indeed I did. Yeah, it was cute when they were kids, and now they're just trying to humiliate me.
Get out.
I wish I could. But humiliation is their love language. So, how about you?
My teenage daughter got me a coupon for a mani-pedi.
I love a good mani-pedi.
No, you don't get it. She wants me to take her to get a mani-pedi so I can pay for the mani-pedi. Can you take that baby tie off, please?
That's what's bothering you about this ensemble?
I just can't talk to you with it on.
How about your boy?
He got me a Love Me Tender trout.
Fish me tender, fish me sweet, never let me go.
Well, those sound like good gifts.
Do they?
You did not go to church dressed like this today.
Yeah, I guess.
Hey, listen. As fathers, we try to provide. We communicate with grunts more than we do words. We leave the toilet seat up as a conscious act of rebellion. And we don't complain about our Father's Day gifts. That's a father's lot in life, my friend.
It's not the gifts. It's really not the gifts. See this? My daughter gave this to me for Father's Day when she was 5 years old. She said to my wife, "Mommy, I need to get Daddy the best gift ever because he's the best dad ever." She even wrote here on the tag, "Happy Father's Day." She cuddled with this thing every night until she gave it to me. I was this little girl's whole world. One year they're getting you cherished stuffed animals, and then in the blink of an eye, it's pedicures and fish. They just grow up so fast. I just want to know that my role as a father matters before it's too late. I am going to get that fish a reservation at Heartbreak Hotel. Our pastor this morning at church said, scripture, a child's glory is their father. That sums it up. That's all I want to be. Just want to make my kids proud, encourage them. Just be the man God called me to be.
Hey, Dad.
Duty calls.
Hey, you are your kid's glory. Your daughter, she's not looking for a freebie. She's saying she wants to spend time with you. And your son, he thinks you have a good sense of humor. I am pretty sure that your kids still think you're the greatest dad ever. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Hashtag dads are awesome.
It's a joy and a pleasure to be here with you, worshiping, and I just want to share a little about why I'm here. I serve on the board for Business on Belgrade Association. We host all the events on Belgrade Avenue. I'm also on the committee for North Mankato Fun Days. That is going to be happening July 8th. The parade is at 11 a.m. It goes right by the church, so I wanted to just come visit with you. I met with Pastor Crandall a few weeks ago for coffee, and I shared, we've talked several times about how we can collaborate together because all of our events are right here, and everybody wants to be part of the community. Everybody wants to be part of all the fun family events that we have. So to share just a little history, I'm a lifelong resident of Mankato. I've been here a little over 50 years. And so the North Mankato Fun Days Parade it's pretty neat how this all started. This was the 57th year of the Fun Days events, and it started as a result of the community members coming out and helping with preventing the flooding. So they were sandbagging and doing all kinds of events, all the community members trying to prevent the flooding to the homes here in our community. So this is our 57th year of doing this event, which is really cool. And it's grown into and matured into what it is today with the carnival. We're having a petting zoo. We have all of the live bands that are down there that weekend. We're going to have a car show again this year. So all the fun things that we do. And my biggest task with the Fun Days is I get to coordinate the parade, which is fun because I went to it as a little child, and so it's come full circle that I get to be part of it today and coordinating. What I wanted to share with you is how others within the congregation and how other community members could help us. It is so the way that we orchestrate this is we meet Saturday morning down at the police annex, and Chief of Police Gullickson and Sean Morgan, they give us all, the safety tips, and they kind of go through, this is how we want it to work, this is how we want it to flow, this is what we need you to be looking out for. There's several of us that get walkie-talkies in case there's somebody who, because it's really warm, people have gotten ill during the parade, so we want to try to help those people. We also just kind of guide the traffic. It's casual-ish. We just guide the traffic and make sure that the parade is flowing along and that everybody is safe and that everybody is healthy throughout the event. So that's what I wanted to share with you. That's kind of the opportunity that we have today. That's with North Mankato Events and Activities. We also have talked about all of the events with Business on Belgrade Association. I'm not going to take your whole morning talking about that, but I just wanted to come give you, like a little introduction of the events. There's Beer on Belgrade, Blues on Belgrade, Bells on Belgrade. So all of those events that we would like to collaborate with your congregation based on the fact that logistically you guys are right here and we're just down the block. So that's what my ask is today. If you know of anybody who would like to help us with the parade, it's 8:30 to about 1:30 p.m. We all get little vests that identify us. The police officers will give us little posts where we need to be standing throughout the parade, and there will be about 15 of us that are just guiding the parade along and making sure that it's flowing nicely. So if you have interest in that, please let Pastor Crandall know, and I would be happy to, he can pass along the names, and I'd be happy to visit with anybody a little bit further about that. So thank you for your time, and thank you for letting us worship with you today.
Now, this summer, I've been starting to announce this summer, we are doing a joint vacation Bible school for kids. We're going to be joining with Crossview Covenant Church, and we're going to be doing from August 7th to 10th. We're going to be doing VBS with them. It's a Monday through a Thursday, and it'll be in the mornings from 9 to 11:30 a.m. We are looking for some volunteers to help out because we're going to do it together. I'm hoping to send anywhere from 10 to 15 volunteers if we can get a few people to help out. And here's what they need. We're looking for people to basically just hang out with the kids is one thing you could do. Be a group leader. A group leader isn't somebody, you don't have to teach, you don't have to lead anything. You just got to be there and build relationships and get to know the kids in your group. And you'll be with that group all week. And you'll be having the schedule and just bringing your kids to the different stations and the scheduled activities that week. The second thing is that you could sign up to be a teacher because each station will have their own teachers or activity leader for that activity, and they're looking for people to teach lessons and people to do crafts and that's things like that. And then they're also looking for people to maybe help decorate or maybe people to help set up. They'll be setting up for that after church at Crossview on Sunday, August 6th. So they need help with that. But then also, if you like to cook or like to bake, they need help baking goodies and treats for kids for their treat time. That's something you could do. And that wouldn't require being there that week for the whole time, but that's one thing. And so there's lots of different ways you can volunteer. So I encourage you to think about it and let us know, let me know. You can shoot me a text message. You can email me, email the office. Let us know. Strongly consider helping out that week. It'll be a really fun time. Pastor Brad Jackson at Crossview and myself, we've got some fun things in the works that we're going to be doing. And you know, kids love making fun of the pastors. So we're going to have a good time. We're going to give them the fun there. So August 7th to 10th, joint VBS. We encourage you to help out with kind of fun thing that we got. I want to start announcing it now is that it's just about halfway through 2023 here, coming up in a little over a month. And it's been a few years since we've done a church directory for Belgrade. So we're going to do a new 2023 church directory this year. What's going to happen is that somebody from the company that bought out Life Touch is going to be coming out and taking pictures in September. They'll come out and they'll take pictures, and everyone's going to get a free directory. And then if you want to purchase the pictures that they take from there, that you can definitely do that as well through them. Oh, and a free 8x10. That's coming up in September, and I'll have solidified dates for you coming up. But I just wanted to kind of put the bug in your ear, and in September we'll be starting to take photos for our 2023 church directory. And my hope is to have that out to you so everybody has the directory kind of somewhere between Thanksgiving and before Christmas. So kind of a, early Belgrade Christmas gift, I guess. And my goal this year also, my second goal is that, in the past, the directories have had some blank pictures where there's no picture there. There's family information, but no picture. I would love to have a picture in every single slot for every single family. And when the time comes to get the pictures taken, they'll have a photographer out here for 3 or 4 days. They can also come out further than that. But if you can't make the time slots when we do post them, I can also come out and take your photo as well. And so, or you can come in at a different time and we can do that and submit photos also. But that's going to be coming up in Hey, what's going on, y'all? Pastor Dan here, and happy Father's Day to all you dads out there. Hope you can relax today and maybe drink a little lemonade or, watch some TV and relax, or maybe get some work done in the garage, or whatever you want to do that fills your tank today. We celebrate you and hope you can have a wonderful Father's Day today. Well, this morning we're continuing our series called Summer Refresh. And we're talking about the idea that life can get stale, it can get old, it can get boring, and sometimes we need to refresh a little bit. And so what we're going to do in this series is we're just kind of going to go back to the basics a little bit and refresh ourselves with our faith and so that we can be refreshed this summer. So we're doing a summer refresh. And as we're doing that, we're going to refresh ourselves in a couple ways. And we're going to talk about what that means in one of those ways this morning. And so I hope this is helpful to you today. And I hope that this finds you refreshed or knowing how to move forward in a refreshing way with your faith after today. And so without further ado, hope you enjoy Summer Refresh and have a wonderful day. And again, happy Father's Day. We'll see you soon. Bless you all. Grace and peace. Well, this morning I figured since this message, I'm going to kind of bookend it with a story, but this story is actually a movie, and I remember taking my nieces to this movie. I think it came out in 2004, and I took my nieces to this movie in the theater, and then ended up buying it later on DVD and showing my kids this movie, this story. It's a kids movie, but it's kind of a darker kids movie. And you might be saying, like, why would you show your kids some sort of a dark story for kids? But the idea is this story, it follows the life of three children, three siblings, and they go through a series of unfortunate events. And so, which is the name of the movie. And so, but you'll see what I mean. And so I'm going to show a video clip here. I'm going to show a series of 3 video clips throughout the sermon here, and 3 short video clips. And this first one is kind of telling you a little bit about each character. And why I'm showing this clip will make sense at the end of the message. But let's go ahead and show this video clip, and we'll follow the lives of the 3 Baudelaire children and the unfortunate events that they go through.
My name is Lemony Snicket, and it is my sad duty to document this tale. Violet Baudelaire, the eldest, was one of the finest 14-year-old inventors in the world. Anyone who knew Violet well could tell she was inventing something when her long hair was tied up in a ribbon. In a world of abandoned items and discarded materials, Violet knew there was always something. Something she could fashion into nearly any device for nearly every occasion. And no one was better to test her inventions than her brother. Klaus Baudelaire, the middle child, loved books. Or rather, the things he learned from books. The Baudelaire parents had an enormous library in their mansion, a room filled with thousands of books on nearly every subject. And nothing pleased Klaus more than spending an afternoon filling up his head with their contents. And everything he read, he remembered. Sunny, the youngest, had a different interest. She liked to bite things and had 4 sharp teeth. There was very little that Sunny did not enjoy biting. Sunny was at an age when one mostly speaks in a series of unintelligible shrieks. For instance, which probably meant, "Look at that mysterious figure emerging from the fog." Or perhaps, "What is a banker like Mr. Poe doing, trudging through the sand to find us at Briny Beach?"
Children, I'm afraid I must inform you of an extremely unfortunate event.
So every story starts with great characters. Yet no story is a story without conflict. So this scene sets up, and you kind of get to know these 3 children. And what happens in the sentences that follow this scene is the banker informs these 3 kids that while they're sitting there playing on the beach, there's been a fire in their home, and their parents have died in the fire. And the rest of the movie takes place as they become orphans, and they're going through these different homes, and they end up with a distant relative who's kind of an evil relative who just wants the family fortune. And so they're brilliant, sweet children, but they go through this horrific event in their life. And throughout the movie, they go through other serious, horrific events. Now, like I said, no story is a story without conflict. No story is a story without opposition or resistance or maybe even just boredom. Wanting what you can't have. There's no story without some sort of resistance or conflict. It's every story there is, because it's every one of our stories as well. Our lives are a series of longing, of resistance, of conflict, of failing, and then learning to overcome and learning to grow, and doing that over and over again. And in every story, the most interesting part about it isn't the random things that happen. Those might keep our attention. However, what makes a great story is how a character grows throughout the conflict. There can be no growth without resistance. And sometimes the resistance that comes can be irritating. You know, it could be fueled by minor annoyances, like being stuck in traffic or, becoming late for an important meeting or something like that. Or sometimes the resistance can be something more, like losing a job or a failing relationship or crashing your favorite car or something like that. But sometimes, even worse, sometimes the resistance can be harder than that. Sometimes the resistance can be unbearable, where instead of just losing a job, you lose a string of jobs. Instead of just losing a relationship, you actually end up losing a loved one or two. Or maybe that long-term hope that was attached to a relationship, or a dream that you've worked so hard for, gone forever. Sometimes the conflict, the resistance, the opposition is overwhelmingly hurtful and too much to handle. When our stories shift in that way, when something happens and it causes a shift in our stories, it can be too much for us to handle. It can drive us mad in the moment, for a moment. And sometimes the shift can seem to take us out at the knees. Well, what do we do in those scenarios? Like I said, it's a familiar pattern because it's all of our stories, and it's been all of our stories since the beginning. And you say, why are you talking about such a deep thing? Why are you going so deep and heavy right away in a series called Refresh? That's supposed to be, isn't refreshing supposed to be like light and fluffy? Well, yes, but sometimes you can't get to the refreshing unless you remove the roadblock that's stopping the refresh, you know? But many of us in our lives, we encounter opposition in our stories, in our trajectory, in our journey. And this conflict can feel like we just want to be done. We want to lay down, we want to quit. And so this is what we're going to talk about today. And our scripture today starts off with the people who have experienced the heights of this kind of despair. But they've experienced it collectively as a people. And so in our scripture today, it's from Lamentations chapter 3, verses 17 through 26. And most people have never read the book of Lamentations. But the book of Lamentations are just that. It's like a poetic lament. You're like, what's a lament? You know, in ancient Hebrew tradition, nowadays in our modern American culture, we don't like to give voice or language or thought to negative emotions or negative experiences. We want to lock them away or move on really quickly without processing them, which is why we have so much anxiety and trauma in our culture. And people that you know, a lot of times we have things that are wrong with us and we don't know what's wrong with us. The doctor can't figure it out so many times. And there's some things that are physical that I'm sure science hasn't been able to pinpoint yet. But a lot of times it's psychological because we're not dealing with the hard things in our life. We think we have to be strong and just push through it. But that's actually hurting us. And in ancient Hebrew culture, they had a tradition called lament. And a lament is basically when you give voice to those negative emotions, even if they're irrational. In the Psalms, there's all sorts of psalms that are laments. Up to even maybe 2/3 of the Psalms are laments. And there's things in there that are absolutely irrational that some of the writers pen. Like there's one psalm that they're so angry at their enemies that they're asking God to dash the heads of the enemy's babies against rocks. They're like, how could God allow that in their scriptures? Well, it's not because God condones that behavior. It's because what God is condoning is the poetic expression of negative emotion. We have to express negative emotion in some way. But you have to figure out how to do it in a way that's healthy and productive and not in a way that's destructive. And a healthy and productive way is to put it into writing. And so that's what the book of Lamentations is. It's this written form that gives voice to anger and frustration and despair. That's what a lament is. And so this scripture passage is God's people have lost everything. They went from like the most preeminent nation, the most famous, the most prosperous nation in the globe under King David. And they descended into this tiny, powerless tribe that ancient empires would just come and subjugate. And they refused to cooperate to such an extent that Babylon rose up and destroyed their temple, scattered them across the known world. So they couldn't carry out their rituals in their temple. Their land that was part of their cultural story for centuries had been taken from them. Some of them were left in the wreckage of all of this, but most of them were, if they weren't killed, were taken away into Babylon and assimilated into Babylon. And so the prophet Jeremiah writes his book of Jeremiah at the end of this process, of this horrific experience where Babylon destroys them. Well, then, while they're in captivity in Babylon and they've lost everything, the prophet Jeremiah writes, it's attributed to Jeremiah, he writes this book called Lamentations, a collection of laments. And so that's what's happening here. And so let's read the scripture from Jeremiah's writing, Lamentations chapter 3, verses 17 through 26. It says this: I have been deprived of peace. I have forgotten what prosperity is. So I say, my splendor is gone, and all that I had hoped from the Lord. I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I well remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet, this I call to mind. Therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They're new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion. Therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It's good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. So you see what I mean? This is giving voice. This is giving voice to the anger and to the frustration and the pain of a people who've lost everything. And maybe you might feel, maybe you've gone through a time in your life, maybe you're in a time in your life right now where you've lost everything. I would venture to say that many of us know what that feels like to some extent, on some level. Maybe not everything, but it could have felt like that. And so we feel like we've been deprived of peace. We feel like we've forgotten what prosperity is. We feel like we well remember our affliction and our soul is downcast within us, and we just want to scream. Where things aren't going right and everything seems to be crashing down, or maybe our heart seems to implode within us. When we get to these times in our life, how do we refresh? Well, let's look at the scriptures a little bit. You know, the first thing that you see there is, the first thing that the prophet writes, the first lament in that scripture is, he says, I have been deprived of peace. How many of you, you don't have to show of hands, but how many of you have ever felt like you've been deprived of peace? The word peace in Hebrew is the word shalom. It doesn't mean tranquil. It means whole, where there's nothing missing, there's nothing broken, you're whole. But when you feel like you've been deprived of wholeness, you feel like you're incomplete in some way. You know, our schedules can get intense. We can feel like life is robbing us of our wholeness, of our peace. Or worse, when we feel like our peace has been taken from us. Sometimes, even if it's in subtle ways, even when we don't realize it's happening, we can start to blame it on those closest to us. Not consciously, it just kind of happens. We take it out on the safest people around us. Our spouse, our partner, our kids, our parents, our friends, family, coworkers. It can be easy to blame all of our issues on those that are closest to us when we've been deprived of peace. And so the prophet here, Jeremiah, is giving voice to this this pain, this opposition within him, this conflict in their story arc. When you get to this point in your story arc, when you're deprived of peace and wholeness, it doesn't feel like it's a story arc. It doesn't feel like you're in the middle of the story. It feels like you're at the end of it. And this is all. And there's nothing more. This is all it'll ever be. We've been deprived of our wholeness. Second thing that he gives voice to, he says, I have forgotten what prosperity is. He says, I've been deprived of peace. He says, I've forgotten what prosperity is. Now, so many of us have been at this point in our lives, when we can start to drift from a mindset of I have access to everything I need. We can start to drift from that mindset and instead develop an unhealthy scarcity mindset. You can fall into survival mode, where we feel like we have to take what we need to get our needs met. Our needs aren't getting met, so we've got to take what we need. And that taking happens in unhealthy ways. And we have to take out of a sense of hopelessness or despair. We've forgotten what it means to be prosperous. I'm not talking about being rich or wealthy. I'm talking about prosperity, like in a genuine way, the kind of prosperity that we can all have, no matter what class we are, no matter where we are in life. Well-being. We have access to it, but many times it doesn't seem like it. It doesn't feel like it. We've forgotten what prosperity is. We go through these hard times, we can feel like what the prophet says next. He says, my splendor is gone and all that I've hoped for. He says, I've been deprived of peace. I've forgotten what prosperity is. And he says, my splendor is gone and all that I've hoped for. He says, when my splendor is gone, all that I'd hoped for. When we get to this point, we can lose our sense of self, if we even ever had it to begin with. We can forget who we are. We can forget how we anchor ourselves. We can forget the confidence that resides within us. This stalwart anchor that only God can give us from the inside. This internal splendor, not in an arrogant way, in an honest, confident way. We forget who we are. When you forget who you are, we get into all sorts of trouble in our lives. When our sense of identity seems to slip. So he says, I've been deprived of peace. I've forgotten what prosperity is. My splendor is gone, all that I've hoped for. And he gets to this point, and he says this, he says, I remember my affliction and my wandering. The bitterness, the gall. And he says it again. He goes, I well remember them. Well. And my soul is downcast within me. That phrase, my soul is downcast within me, in English it doesn't have much teeth, but in the original Hebrew, it's a deep statement. It's like my heart's being ripped out of me and it's beating in front of me and I'm squeezing it and throwing it on the ground. It's a very vivid, graphic, angry phrase. This is indicating trauma or a depression. Not just despair, but like a descent into despair. When we get into this point of our lives, when we encounter this kind of conflict, it causes this trauma, that won't go away unless we deal with it. And so the scripture, this lament, it gives voice to these things that we go through, the hard times that we hit. And I'm telling you, you're saying, why is this a refresh? Because this is fundamental to all of our lives. We've all been there in some way, shape, or form. We've all felt a despair. We've all felt a depression. We've all felt like we've been deprived of our peace. We've all felt like, we've forgotten what prosperity is, that our identity's been taken from us. We remember our affliction. We've all been there on some level at some point. And the most basic thing we can do in our faith is to learn how to follow and get up again in the midst of all these things, without ignoring it, without closing our eyes, gritting our teeth, clenching our fists, and pretending that it's not there, or pretending that it didn't happen, and pretending like the feelings aren't there because they hurt so bad. Faith 101 is that we learn to deal with the mess instead of ignore it. If you ignore it, it's only in your consciousness, because your body and your mind subconsciously our bodies and our subconscious mind does not know how to ignore trauma and despair and hurt and pain. And so when we because it hurts too much and we make ourselves stop thinking about it, our body's going to internalize it, and it's going to eventually, if we don't deal with it, come out in really strange physical issues. And our subconscious, it's going to come out, we're going to develop patterns and characteristics, and we might not realize it, but I guarantee you our loved ones will, and it'll hurt them. We'll develop things that'll actually be painful to others around us. And so, in our tradition as people of faith, long ago, we've learned how to give voice to these lament and to our laments in our lives. But in the West, we don't like to do that, because we got to be positive. We got to just move on and blah, blah, blah. That's actually hurting us. So what do we do with it? How do we refresh from this? Faith 101. In the scriptures, there's one little word. In our scripture today, after these things, there's one tiny 3-letter word that puts everything in its place and gives us control of the situation. And it's this 3-letter little word, yet. Yet. It's the turning point. It's the hinge. It's the bolt on which the story swings back in our favor. In the midst of sitting in our pain and our brokenness and our mess and giving voice to it in some productive way that doesn't hurt others, there's a yet. The scriptures say this in verse 21. After all of the things Jeremiah said, he gets to this. He says, yet. Everybody say yet. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Mind you, his emotions aren't right yet. He's given voice to them. He's still in the despair. He's still in the pain. His splendor still feels like it's gone. He's still feeling deprived of peace. He's still forgotten what prosperity is. He's still remembering his affliction and his wanderings. In the midst of all this, he goes, yet I'm going to choose to have hope, and I call this to mind. Verse 22, because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. For his compassions never fail. Let's say that together. For his compassions never fail. Say it with me. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those who hope in him, to the one who seeks him. It's good to quietly wait for the salvation of the Lord. See, when the hinge shows up in our lives, when we realize there's a yet, we're reminded that even though we're still in the mess, we're not ignoring it, we're not minimizing the weight of the situation, we're not putting some Pollyanna, cheap Christian platitude, well, I guess God's got me, while you're dying inside. You're not doing any of that. While you're still in your pain, you can still say, God's got my back. I don't see it right now, yet I know God's got my back. The yet is a hinge. It's the hinge. And when we're in this seat of despair, where's the hinge? Where's the yet in our lives? God's compassion is new every morning. The Hebrew word for compassion here is the word ramache. And it means a gut-wrenching emotion that leads to action. The literal translation means from the womb. Compassion means from the gut or from the womb that leads to some sort of action. God has this, when you're going through hard times, you're like, where is God? Why is he not here? Why is my situation like this? I guarantee God did not cause the situation, but he's there. And he's got this compassion, this gut-wrenching emotion, and it's leading to action on your behalf. He's placed a yet in your life, and you may not see it yet. You probably don't see it yet. I remember anytime I've been in that deep, dark place, I've never seen the hinge. I've never seen the yet. And that's okay, because you're supposed to be processing. But when you're in that space, God is there, and he's putting a yet there. But his compassion, his gut-wrenching love for you from his womb, from the creative parts of his being, is birthing a new story for you. A new day. And not only a metaphorical new day in your story, literally a new day, every day. He says this gut-wrenching love, compassion for you is new every morning. Every day. There's new mercy for you. There's a new compassion. There's a new hope. There's a new perspective. There is a refresh. When the hinge shows up, when you notice it, we're reminded. When the yet makes itself evident and visible in your situation, we're reminded that nothing is permanent. No bad situation will last forever. Sometimes in the midst of our pain, we got to push forward, but in the midst of it, not ignoring it. But sometimes we need to lay down for a bit, and we need to lament, and we need to cry the tears. Sometimes we need to grieve. Sometimes we need to feel sorry for ourselves for a short amount of time. Sometimes we need space to remember that it's okay to not be okay. Sometimes the best thing for us to do when we're in this place is to simply rest. It's just to rest. And remember that tomorrow's a new day. God's compassion is going to be new in the morning. There's a yet, there's a hinge, there's a story swing coming. I might not feel it tomorrow, I might not see it tomorrow, but I know it's there. There's always a hinge. There's always something, even though we might not see it. Sometimes it's to take us out of our situation, but most of the time, it's to guide us in the midst of it. The next little clip in this movie is a scene where it looks like it's the end. But there's a part that you'll hear where one of the kids says, there's always something. There's always a hinge. Watch this next clip.
Custody granted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nice doing business with you. Children, let's stop for a treat. Soda, banana.
Pilot? Where'd the locks go?
What is it?
I think it's a schedule.
Go!
I'm calling you back about that inheritance question you raised.
Mr. Paul, thank goodness.
Who is this?
It's Violet Baudelaire. We're in Count Olaf's car.
Oh, hello, Violet. Well, where's Count Olaf?
He's not here right now, but...
You're driving the car alone?
No, the car is on the train tracks and the train is coming.
I'm sorry, Violet. I can't hear a thing. I'm driving next to a train.
We're going to be hit by a train.
Right, yes, I can't hear because of the train.
No.
I'll call you back when I get to the bank. Goodbye.
Klaus, you've read books on trains. What do we do?
Track switcher. There. It's too far away.
No, there has to be something we can use to pull it.
There's nothing in here.
There's always something. Sonny, bite the head off that elf. Quick, go back in.
Violet,
I got it.
I don't mean to rush you. Nice shot.
Thank you. Pull.
There's always something. There's always something. And we know that. Now, obviously, this is a movie. But when it comes to our real lives, when things happen, our story that we think is over, it's really not over. It's never the end. And when we know that there's always something, we know that we can trust, and we know that we can rest, and that's called faith. In the midst of it all, in the midst of the struggle, this is like refresh, this is Basics Christianity 101. When you go through hard stuff, realize that it's not the end. There's always something. There's always a yet. There's always a hinge. God's got your back in some way. I want to read this scripture to you again, but from a different translation. This is from the Message paraphrase, and I love this version of it. It says this, Lamentations 3:17-26 in the Message. It says, He ground my face into the gravel. He pounded me into the mud. I gave up on life altogether. I've forgotten what the good life is. I've forgotten what it's like. I said to myself, this is it. I'm finished. God is a lost cause. It's a good thing to hope for help from God. I'll never forget the trouble, the utter lostness, the taste of ashes, the poison I've swallowed. I remember it all. Oh, how well I remember. The feeling of hitting the bottom. But there's one other thing that I remember, and I'm remembering. I keep a grip on hope. God's loyal love couldn't have run out. His merciful love couldn't have dried up. They're created new every morning. How great your faithfulness. I'm sticking with God. I say it over and over. He's all I've got left. God proves to be good to the one who passionately waits. To the one who diligently seeks, it's a good thing to quietly hope for help from God. It's a good thing when you're young to stick it out through the hard times. No matter what you're going through, there's always something. God is always, always with you. And when you remember that, tough situations won't go away, but God will make something beautiful out of them. Let's play this last short clip here.
Dear reader, there are people in the world who know no misery and woe, and they take comfort in cheerful films about twittering birds and giggling elves. There are people who know that there's always a mystery to be solved, and they take comfort in researching and writing down any important evidence. But this story is not about such people. This story is about the Baudelaires. And they are the sort of people who know that there's always something. Something to invent, something to read, something to bite, and something to do to make a sanctuary, no matter how small. And for this reason, I am happy to say, the Baudelaires were very fortunate indeed.
There's always something. In the worst of situations, look for the hinge. Look for the yet. Rest in the fact that God is with you. Without ignoring the laments of our hearts, know and rest that God is with you. There's a yet there. You'll see it eventually because He is faithful.
There's light for a look at
hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Belgrade Online. If it was life-giving and encouraging to you, please let us know by visiting our giving page at baumc.org/give. Thanks again for watching and have a blessed week.